Okay, let's talk about Brock Purdy. In your opinion, if anything, what more does Brock need to prove? And this is a
Yeah, I
loaded
mean,
question. You can go a
yeah.
million different ways with this, right?
So the reason I brought this up is I actually had the discourse on Twitter is really fun for me. I feel like I have some really great guys that um, continue to kind of challenge me and get into some really good discourse. So I think one of the topics is Brock Purdy a top 10 quarterback, right? Um, Based off of his numbers, just stats wise, he's clearly is. He's top 10 in every single important category that a quarterback has outside of touchdowns thrown, right? But mic drop with Mensa, I want to shout him out. He made this point, and this is kind of how I wanted to ask the question: is it possible for a quarterback in their first 3 years to even comfortably be placed in the top 10? And the reason why I asked the question is, we saw a guy like Mac Jones who had pretty good rookie year, took his team to the playoffs. And then obviously we see him now, not clearly not even a, top 15 quarterback. If, might not even be a top 20 quarterback. We see a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who I think a lot of people look at and say, hey, that's a top 10 quarterback by some of his years. But then you see, this year, I don't know if you could really say he's a top 10 quarterback, even though he's gotten better weapons and, a year longer in, Peterson's system. So when I ask what more does Brock Purdy need to prove, at this point, is there anything he can do, Jesse, to even be considered a top 10 quarterback? Or is it always going to be, we don't know because the sample size is too small?
I think everybody's different. And that's what makes this fun. That's what makes sports fun is everybody has different opinions. I I think your question's interesting because whether it's intentional or not, I mean, it's really kind of directed towards me because I am the 3-year guy. Like this, you've
Yeah.
heard me say it a million times, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. I've always been that way. And even for Hertz, who in year 3 started to prove it, I said, that was great. And it was an MVP type year. But now that he has proven it, I just give me a second year like that. And then I'll be a full believer. I just want to see it. Just show it to me. So I am like the 3-year guy. Here's what I want to say about the situation. I think because quarterbacks are constantly coming into the league and exiting the league and new starters come along every year, I think the better way to start having the conversation, and really this whole Brock Purdy situation has kind of shed light on it for me, is instead of saying, hey, is this, you can have your top tens or your tiers or however you want to do it. I think this league is turned into such a week to week league and year to year league that really your rankings should be fluid and power rankings. And the difference between a power ranking and an actual ranking are very, very different. Power rankings are literally week to week. Last week, the Miami Dolphins were the number 1 team in the NFL. Well, they lost to the Buffalo Bills, and now the 49ers are there. Or the Buffalo Bills have jumped up power rankings. If we're doing a power rankings with quarterbacks, I mean, Brock Purdy's not top 10, Sunil. He's probably top 3 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Burrow aren't even top 15, top 20. Joe Burrow is, if we're just strictly doing power rankings based off of what we've seen week to week this year, Joe Burrow is way down the list. Regardless of injury or whatever, people want to say, he's way down the list. Patrick Mahomes isn't a top 3 quarterback right now. Now, at the end of the year, I fully expect that he'll climb his way back up there because he's great. And obviously, when you say, okay, well, Brock Purdy's top 3, I mean, so what? Are you going to take him over this guy or this guy? No, if I'm taking a franchise guy, Brock Purdy, not even a full season in, I can't take him over guys that I've seen be great for years. I can't do that. But in this moment, is he playing very good football? And all that matters right now is this moment. All that matters right now is this team. And can this team win a Super Bowl? Not next year doesn't matter, not the year after that. And that's where I think a lot of people looked at me as, a hater of Brock or whatever, because I'm always looking towards the future. And so what I'm trying to do to be better, to have a better discourse around this conversation and actually, listen, I root for Brock Purdy. I'm going to do that. He's the 49ers quarterback. The real thing is, let's just live in the moment. I don't know what he's going to be in 2 years. I don't know if he can carry a team that's not loaded. I don't know. But should I even care right now when they don't have to make a decision to pay him? Should I even care when really this year is all that matters? I probably shouldn't. In this moment, what I know is Brock Purdy's playing great football, regardless of whether it's because talent's around him, great play caller. None of that matters. He's just playing good football. So let's give him credit for that. That's where I'm at with it. But then, the frustrating thing is, because it is week to week, you get people saying, overriding long-term careers or players who have been very good for a long time. And it's like, well, they had a bad week, so they suck. I'm not going to do that either. There's a group of guys that are established as very good or great quarterbacks in this league. Those guys can have a bad week or two. Guys that aren't established yet in this league, Trevor Lawrence can't have a 5-game stretch where he's not good. Joe Burrow can, because Joe Burrow's proven it for longer.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen can. Patrick Mahomes can. Those guys have proven it. Jalen Hurts cannot. He doesn't have enough of a track record to say he's great. If Brock Purdy right now goes on a five-game skid where he's throwing 2 interceptions a game, 1 touchdown, and 210 yards, that changes the whole perspective on who he is. He can't afford to have 5 bad games yet in a row. Joe Burrow is, and people are letting him off the hook because he has multiple years of playing top-level football. People argued with me all offseason that he's better than Josh Allen, which good luck with that argument now. But either way, that was the argument. People like those guys deserve a little bit more grace than some of these other guys. So I'm just going to start taking it week to week. In a power ranking situation, Brock Purdy right now is top 3. I don't know where he's going to be at in 2 years. I'll worry about 2 years from now and 2 years from now, and that's where I'm going to sit with it.
I think that's fair. For me, Brock Purdy, in the circumstances that he's been placed in, has nothing to prove, right? New circumstances will come about, and then we could judge him in those circumstances. Do we want to see him in a moment where he has to do a game-winning drive late in a game with all the pressure on it in a meaningful game? Absolutely. He hasn't been put in that situation. So for us to be like, nah, he doesn't get credit for what he's in because he hasn't been put in this circumstance yet, I think that's unfair. He doesn't need to prove anything. In the games, he's played exactly the way you need him to play for this team to look the best that it has in quite a long time. And we can't, for people that say, hey, if he was, in this certain circumstance, he's not going to be as good as all of these players because his arm's too weak or this is too that or all this kind of stuff. You don't know just as much as I don't know, right? We have to wait and see if he, in those circumstances, how he responds. And to me, I think that's the grace that we have to give Brock Purdy is if you're holding against him circumstances that he's never been in, there's nothing he can do, and he will never be able to prove to you what he needs to prove because up until he gets put into those circumstances. But as far as the circumstances that he's been placed in, we've seen him at a historic blitz rate go out there and throw for over 300 yards. People wanted to say, oh, it was because of all the yak that, the receivers gave him. Then he comes out the next game, throws close to 300 yards, 280 plus with very minimal yak. Now nobody's like talking about yak as far as his yards. They're not even talking about the game he had. So to me, I think there's a certain fan base that Brock Purdy will never be enough until he wins 2 Super Bowls or whatever the case may be. But to me, I think he's done everything he needs to do, given the circumstances that he's given, to earn my trust. He's clearly earned the team's trust, Shanahan's trust. And I'm excited to see him against a much better defense with the Cowboys and how he responds, because these are the games that we really get to see what he's capable of, even though we've seen him win 2 playoff games too. So it's pretty exciting what we have as far as a quarterback option right now in Brock Purdy.